Hi, everyone. My name is Rabinowitz. I'm a second-year PhD student in social psychology, and I'll be sharing a bit about my work today on how stories shape our perceptions of systemic racism in the U.S. So when we talk about racism, at least in psychology, we usually frame it as the biased attitudes, beliefs, or behaviors that are carried on by prejudiced individuals, so as something that's rooted inside individual minds. But a growing body of research is demonstrating the ways that racism is also built into the cultural products of the world around us. So how things like our mainstream books, movies, and media, or even common school curriculums and history lessons, how these facilitate ways of seeing the world that help maintain the current racial hierarchy. So following this research, my project was designed to answer two broad questions. The first was, how are popular narratives, so the mainstream stories existing in the world around us, how are these contributing to people's justification and support for racially biased institutions? And the second question was, how might alternative stories be a tool for effectively communicating about systemic racism in these institutions in a way that increases awareness and opposition to the racial bias? So for this project, we focus specifically on narratives of incarceration because the carceral system is culturally central in the U.S. and is a large driver of systemic racism. We recruited approximately 600 white participants, and we asked them to read one of three different types of stories. Some participants were assigned to read redemptive stories of incarceration. So these are stories that highlight the ways an individual grew, healed, or improved during their time in prison. And notably, these stories are becoming increasingly common in our mainstream media landscape, so these sort of represent our more mainstream narratives. Some participants were assigned to read critical stories of incarceration, so alternative stories that highlight an individual's experience of bias and racialized harm in the carceral system. And some participants were assigned to read stories about people who are not incarcerated as a control. And all of these stories were true. They were written by real people about their life experiences, and they were available online as part of our media landscape. So after reading the story, we asked participants to share their empathy towards incarcerated people and separately their attitudes towards the carceral system and their support for policies that would involve restructuring the carceral system. And our data collection analysis is still ongoing, but based on early trends from pilot data, we expect to find that the redemptive narratives are most effective at increasing empathy and positive attitudes towards incarcerated people because they're positive, they're uplifting, they're showing how someone grew and healed from their time in prison. But for these same reasons, these redemptive stories might not reliably reduce support for the carceral system because they're showing how someone healed while in it, and including the racialized harm. On the other hand, we expect that critical narratives will be most effective at increasing awareness of and opposition to bias in the carceral system. The readers might actually like and empathize with the storyteller less. So ultimately, our findings will help inform our understanding of the types of narratives that might be most effective for promoting awareness of systemic racism, which can help shape the way we understand the psychological impacts of our current media landscape. And this research is ongoing and very much in support, or conducted with the support of RITM, and we're grateful for that. So thank you.
Can you say more about the participants that you because I thought I heard you say you involved 600 white participants, and I was just curious about where these people are from, and if they're like first generation, and why are they white? You know, in this sense, like how are you determining somebody's whiteness based on to participate in this study?
Yeah, for sure. So this is people who self-identify as white. So these were participants who we recruited online. They reported their racial identity as white. The reason for that is that for this first study, we were interested primarily in understanding how these stories are shaping members of advantaged groups' understanding of these systems, specifically given that they are, beneficiaries of these systems, how these stories might influence their cognition. And there, of course, are other intersecting factors with someone's racial identity, and we measure all of that, and we control for what we're able to in the analyses. But of course, that's true that it's more complicated than simply someone's self-report of their race.
Can you share a little more about what these stories were? Were these like social media posts? Were these like films or novels? Like where did you locate these stories?
Yeah, these were on, so the incarceration stories were on the Marshall Project. They have this series called Life Inside where incarcerated men are writing, and women, but we were having it only be stories from men just for control across the conditions. They're writing about their life experiences, and so we just coded them for the different qualities that were in these stories, whether they were more critical or more redemptive. And so this was all written narratives. It wasn't, movies or audio, although those, of course, exist too, and I think that's sort of a direction we're hoping to head next. But yeah, that's where I found him. Thanks. Thank you.